So hi guys, my name is Dion. I've been involved with Ohrsom Student for about 3 or 4 years now, and I recently started working for them last year, doing the marketing and communications for the Gap Year program. Essentially, it is a Gap Year program that is run from the team in South Africa and as well as a team in Israel. They're on the ground while the Gap Year is happening. So we're kind of getting all the information from the South African team, and we're working with all of them to give you guys the right information and also just assist you in answering all your questions and eventually signing up and going through the interview process and all that kind of stuff. So before I talk about the Gap Year itself, I just wanted to explain what Ohrsom Student is as an organization, if people haven't really heard about it or they don't understand what it is. So essentially, it's a multifaceted organization, and they aim to engage post-high school students with their Judaism and with Israel as well. So Ohrsom Student, essentially, they aim for self-growth through extrapolating contemporary Jewish values and holistically applying them to a student's life. So many young Jewish people from all different types of schools, even non-Jewish ones, once they finish school and they're at uni, and they come together at the Ohrsom Center to discuss important topics with the rabbis and the rebbitzins, as well as enjoying their time together socially, all kind of leading to that ultimate goal of self-growth and personal development. So Ohrsom Students as an organization, what does it have to offer? So they offer a 2-week trip to Israel in July for uni-age students, weekly self-growth sessions on a Monday night, could be really any night in the week, a more comprehensive 4-week Ohrsom 2.0 trip to Israel in December, other leadership opportunities, a gap year program for students, which is what we'll talk about now, and other big events for the Chagim that go on throughout the year, like a very popular Purim event. So the Ohrsom Gap Year program itself, it's a 9-month program. So it runs from the 1st of Feb until October, and it's offered to both South African and Australian students. So the program is done together. Just recently this year as well, we had American students join the program. So probably hoping and expecting that will be happening again next year. The students are based in Jerusalem in well-kept high-end apartments, and obviously a variety of opportunities for all the students, which is what I'll get into. But just before that, I wanted to mention, just through conversation and discussion with people thinking about going on a gap year, even from experience when I was having those conversations about going on a gap year program, I feel that there are like 3 main reasons as to why people don't want to do a gap year program anymore. And I feel that would be, you want to live independently, you want to go to Europe, and you want some sort of work experience as well. So what's so amazing about the Ohrsom Gap Year program is it essentially gives you all of that on a silver platter. So in terms of the living independently, as I just said before, you'll be living in an apartment with 10 other people or something. It's a big, nice, well-kept high-end apartment in Jerusalem, right next to the Shuk. That's your home base for the entire Gap Year program. Obviously, you'll be traveling all around Israel and to a couple other countries as well, which is what I'll get into. But that's essentially your home base the whole time. So you do your cooking, your cleaning, your washing, sort that all out for yourself. Obviously, there'll be people there to help you and assist you, but that's really there for you to grow independently. Going to Europe, so there's an opportunity for the whole group to go to Europe and to India as well. So that's included in the program and in the pricing. And with the work experience, Ohrsom teams up with J Internship. They're the largest facilitator of internships in Israel. And they essentially sit down with the students, figure out their career prospects or their interests, hobbies, all that kind of stuff, kind of what they're interested in, and partner them with an organization to do a 6-week internship. So we had a student do an internship organized through Ohrsom with J Internship. He did that a couple of years ago in Israel. And because he did such a good job there, he got a job back in Melbourne when he came home through the organizations, the companies that he was working for. So you never really do know what kind of opportunity you could stumble upon if you really do apply yourself and, contribute to your own development, not just personally, but also professionally as well. So there are 3 main components, 3 main pillars, I like to call them, to the Ohrsom Gap Year. A couple of them I mentioned before, but I'll just break them down briefly. So the first one is education, and you can see coming off there, it says Judaism/Israel as well. So essentially that means the students will be involved in 2 to 3, it essentially makes up 2 to 3 months of the year of Jewish learning, but it's broken down throughout the entire year into like 2-week slots, something like that. So the boys and girls learnings are done separately. So the boys will go to Ohrsom Gap, which is the yeshiva in Jerusalem, and the girls go to a place called Neve. And it's not necessarily strictly restricted to in-text-based materials. It really does, it is a very holistic experience in terms of you have multiple rabbis coming in to give shiurim, and they're really talking about topics that can really relate to your own personal life and teach you how to make good decisions to be a good person, because that's really what the learning is all about. So the way that works is you'll engage when the learning is on, you'll engage in the learning in the first half of the day. After that, you'll do lunch, and then you'll do an activity with the program, or maybe you'll have a free afternoon, something like that. And in the Israel aspect of it, obviously you'll be touring a little bit around Israel, so you educate yourself and find your own kind of connection to the land as well. But you also do work with an Israel advocacy organization called Stand With Us. And they essentially equip you with the skills to be a Zionist, to stand up for Israel. Us living in the diaspora, and many people around us, whether we stumble upon them at university or on the street, wherever it may be, they don't quite understand the conflict that's going on in the Middle East. We barely understand it as well, but we can educate those kind of people from our perspective, and they really give you the skills to do that in a respectful way. In terms of the career and real world, as I said before, partner up with J Internship, and they'll work really hard to find an organization that really fits your interests and what you want to be doing. And that goes for about 6 weeks. That's a 6-week block in the program as well. And that's the same thing. It could be a half day. It could be you're working 9 to 5 from Monday to Thursday. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But it's honestly an unbelievable opportunity. If you really do apply yourself, you never know where it can take you. And the real world experience as well. That's more so when I was talking about the independent living. So you live in a group in an apartment in Jerusalem, and you have to organize all your cleaning, your cooking, buying your groceries, doing your laundry, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, Ohrsom does offer 3 meals a day to be eaten at the Ohrsom Center in Jerusalem, but they also provide you with some sort of a budget as well to go and get your own groceries and shopping for your own meals, etc. So the travel component involves traveling 2 weeks to Europe and 2 weeks to India as well. They're also done separately. I'm pretty sure India is done around the April mark of the program, and Europe is done much later. So I think the students that are on the gap year now, I think they're going to Europe in a couple of weeks, or maybe next week, which is very exciting for them. And you go to countries like, you go to the Netherlands and Berlin and Paris and Norway, and this is all based off where they've gone before. I can't promise that they'll be going to the same places, but that's kind of an idea of where you may be spending your time for the 2 weeks. And they also do include a Poland trip in there as well, where you do some sort of March of the Living program. It's not March of the Living, but it's something obviously very, very similar to that. And the third pillar there as well is experimental development. So you see activities and skill acquisition coming off of there. So that's all the other cool, really fun activities and programs that Ohrsom organizes for you. So you do a ski trip to the north of Israel on Mount Hermon. So if you don't know how to ski, you can learn how to ski for 5 days. If you do know how to ski, you can learn to get better at it. You go to Eilat for a few days to take part in a scuba diving course to get your open water diving license, which is really, really cool. Take part in the Jerusalem Marathon, do the Yam Liyam, the Sea to Sea multi-day hike, which is really beautiful. Live and work on a kibbutz for a year, experience a 1-week interactive army experience. And then just random things as well, like cooking classes and computer courses and yoga, Amazing Race. And obviously you'll have a lot of your own free time as well to explore Israel and do what you want. So some highlights of the year here, as I mentioned before, I'll just go through it really briefly. This is obviously all, the Europe and the traveling stuff is based on what they've done in the past. Again, I can't promise that that's exactly what will be happening, like the skydiving in Europe, but hopefully it does. But yeah, the ski trip on Mount Hermon, the scuba diving certification in Eilat, the Northern Lights in Norway, which would be amazing, hiking the Himalayas in India, tiger safari, doing the Poland trip in Europe, working on a kibbutz and taking part in the internship. You can see there as well the MDA training and volunteering. So that's a 6-week experience in Israel as well. It basically starts with a 10-day course, after which for a few weeks, you're with first responders. You act as a first responder with advanced first responders in Israel, working with the ambulance, and you respond to real world situations. So that can be quite an intense experience, but also a very fulfilling experience that can really contribute to your own personal development and personal growth. I'm going to go through this really quickly, based mainly because this isn't final. This isn't set in stone at all. This is simply just based off what has happened in the past. But yeah, so it's only a sample itinerary. The dates and itinerary are not 100% accurate, and they very much are subject to change. But this has kind of been the way it's been going the past couple of years. So just keep that in mind anyway. So you'd arrive in Israel on the 3rd of Feb, go straight to the north to do Mount Hermon for the 3-4 day ski trip, come back to Jerusalem for the learning program introduction, and then do the learning program in the morning, activity in the afternoon, and then a week after that for the scuba diving certification, and then back to Jerusalem. And then in March, continue with the learning program and Jerusalem touring. And then you do the army training a week after that, and then the Yom LaYom hike the week after. And then starting in April, obviously do a lot of activities in relation to Pesach and a lot of Pesach prep. And then you do 1 week living and working on a kibbutz. And then after that, in the middle of April, you go to India and do the Himalayas hike, visit the Chabad in India, spend a Shabbos there, do the tiger safari. A really amazing experience to be done with everyone on the program. And then coming back in May, coming back to Israel and starting with the MDA training and the MDA volunteering. And that basically takes you through all the way to the end of May and into the end of June. And then at the end of June, the Ohrsom Israel 2-week trip come. You don't necessarily join them in the activities that you do, but there may be a Shabbos where you guys join and do Kabbalat Shabbat together and maybe have dinner and do some activities together, which would be really fun. And then in July, and starting in mid-July, you have the Israel advocacy and education programs, the learning programs, and then the internship in August. And then in September, more learning programs, and then you do your preparation for Poland. And then you finish off with the Europe trip in October, come back to Israel and do a 2-week wrap up for the end of the program. So that's basically a sample itinerary. Take it with a grain of salt, but we'll be in contact about this further. Just want to cover costing before I finish up. So bear with me, there's quite a bit to break down, but I'm going to try my best here. So the official price is $26,500 US. That includes food and accommodation, but it excludes the cost of the airfares to Israel. However, the participants are required to apply for Masa and Israel Go funding, which in total can be anywhere between $3,500 and $10,000. And Ohrsom as an organization guarantees a minimum of a $5,000 subsidy, which will include the Masa and Israel Go funding. So that means if Masa and Israel Go, the funding that you receive from them is less than $5,000, we guarantee a further subsidy to top you up to $5,000. So you'd be guaranteed a $5,000 subsidy anyway. And we also have an early bird grant of $2,500, and that expires at the end of September, on the 30th of September. So if you sign up before then for the program, you'll be guaranteed that early bird grant. So that essentially means nobody will be paying more than $19,000 if you commit before the early bird expiry date. If you commit afterwards, then it'll be $2,500 extra. And obviously those who receive full Masa and Israel Go funding could pay as little as $14,000 with the early bird grant included. And there are obviously also additional needs-based subsidies, which can be applied for after acceptance, and they'll be given out obviously on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, I have to include a COVID slide as well. Hopefully, it doesn't impact anything that will be happening next year. It hasn't really impacted anything that has happened this year, so hopefully it won't happen next year. But obviously, we're still expecting the program to begin in the start of Feb. If the students are unable to make it to Israel, we will just look at potentially starting the program at a later date. But in the case where the program is cancelled completely, the registration fee will be refunded. And should we be unable to travel to India or Europe, ultimate programming will be substituted in, just like probably additional traveling and touring within Israel. We can do questions as well, but I think probably run out of time. So what you can do is take down the numbers for Melbourne and for Sydney. There's Rabbi Evan Widmont, he's the director of Ohrsom Student in Australia. And my number's there as well. And then the team in Sydney as well, Danny and Riv. and we all have access to this email account, gapyear@awesomestudent.com.au. So I highly recommend you take that email down and take the contact details down. If you are interested, please send us an email. We'll send you all this information as well as a sign up link. After you sign up, we take you through an interview process. It is a selection process, so potentially not everyone who signs up will get chosen to come on the program. But yeah, that's something we can speak about at a later date. So please email us at gapyear@awesomestudent.com.au and we'll help you get the process started. See, there's 7 questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Dion. I reckon we'll ask the 7 questions. We've got an extra 5 minutes for questions. So the first question, for those who have applied for Ohrsom, when will they hear back regarding their acceptance?
So we had a lot of people apply a few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, and they've gone through the interview process already. We still have people that are continuing to apply, and hopefully after this, a few more people will apply as well. For the people that had the interviews a couple of weeks ago, however long ago it was, you should receive that letter next week. We're just finalizing the acceptance letters and who is getting accepted and all that kind of stuff. We just need to tie up a couple loose ends, but you should get that hopefully early next week, if not by the end of next week, for those who have already applied. Yeah.
How religious Orthodox is the education component?
So it is quite religious, the education component, because it is Jewish learning. A lot of it does come from the Torah or from Gemara learning, or you just have Jewish leaders or rabbis come in and talk to you about a certain topic that they really do obviously derive a lot of their ideas from the Torah and from Gemara and everything that they've learned. But what really separates it is they really try and choose topics and shape it in ways that just relates to your own personal life. So even if you aren't religious or Orthodox, or you're just traditional and all that kind of stuff, like myself, but you can really, I'm in that sector, but I take a lot out of the Jewish learnings, because the way I look at it is it really just helps you become a better person, I think, and just make better decisions and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, obviously it is religious in a sense, but you don't have to look at it from that aspect. And the program isn't religious itself. It's really just you guys can make that decision for yourself. I guess it's a platform for you to explore your own connection to Judaism and Israel.
Can you repeat the midrasha for the girls? The name of the midrasha?
Neve. Yeah, I don't know how to spell it, but it's Neve. That's clear.
Thank you. What does Shabbat look like each week?
So Shabbat is probably different each week. I'm sure a lot of the times you will spend it in Jerusalem, where you're just in your apartments, but you'll do either Kabbalat Shabbat at, maybe you go to the Kotel, or you'll go to a shul that's in the area. A lot of times you could be billeted out to host families for dinner or for lunch, or you can all have dinner together in the Ohrsom Center. But there are also times you could go to Sfat for Shabbos and do it all there, or go maybe to Beit Shemesh or something and get billeted out and stay with families over Shabbat. So it really does change here and there. But I think the most common Shabbos theme that you'll see is when you're in Jerusalem and you're kind of just still based in your apartment and can do your own thing on Shabbos.
Do the kids receive a budget for groceries, or do they pay for that themselves?
You receive money for the groceries, because we say you can have 3 meals a day, but obviously you're probably not going to go to the Ohrsom Center 3 times a day to eat the food that they have. So they do organize a budget for you guys for groceries.
Is this one just for new high school grads? Like, what's their age range?
Yeah, it's just for people who have graduated high school. We have other programs for uni age students, like the 2-week one that we just did in Israel. So if you want to talk about that, we can get in contact.
Can you join the Ohrsom program after the program commences, say 2 weeks later, because of other commitments in the earlier part of the year?
Yeah, I guess it depends where they are and what they're doing at the time. If it's something that you can avoid, I would recommend to avoid it, because it'd be tough missing out on those first 2 weeks. But again, it is a 9-month program, so you'd be able to catch up on everything. But that typically is answered on a case-by-case basis. So we'd have to talk privately, probably after this at some point next week, just to discuss the case. But yeah, hopefully you would be able to. Don't see why not, but yeah.
Is there an eligibility criteria, selection criteria that you guys look at?
There's no necessary like strict criteria that we're looking at. We're really just looking at the individual for who they are, their intentions, where they come from, what they want to be doing, all that kind of stuff. And it's really just a decision that's made by the rabbis that are involved in the program to see who they think would benefit most and who would bring a lot to the program as well, and all that, who would gain a lot from it.
Can family visit the participants?
Yeah, of course. There'll be, we don't own Israel when you're there, so you can come to Israel and visit. I'm sure there'll be time on the program. If your family's there, they can come and see you, maybe on a Shabbos or a free weekend, or if you just, I'm sure you can take hopefully a couple of days off to just spend time with your family. That's definitely something that would be able to be figured out.
Is there an Ulpan component to the program?
I don't believe that there is. There may be, but I don't think that there is Hebrew learning. I can get back to you on that one because I'm actually not quite sure. I haven't heard anything about that. I wouldn't be surprised if it is involved, but I don't think so. But I'll ask and double check.
Are the trips to India and Europe kosher catering and shomer Shabbat?
So the whole program is like, if they're giving you food or if you're eating with the program and all that kind of stuff, it is kosher. We're not going to take you to any restaurants that isn't kosher. But then again, you have your own free time. You can go off and do what you want. But yeah, it's a kosher program with the food that we provide you. And in terms of Shomrei Shabbos, when you're all in public together, it's kind of assumed that you don't whip your phone out and start texting your mum back at home. It's kind of a Shabbos atmosphere when everyone's in public, but doesn't mean you have to keep Shabbos personally, like on your own.
Amazing. Got the last 3 questions. I'll put 2 of them together. So how many participants are there on the Gap Year program, and how many do you expect from Australia and South Africa?
On the Gap Year program this year, I think there's about between 30 and 40. Might be a bit more, not entirely sure. The current trend at the moment is that there are just a bit more from South Africa than in Israel, because it has been there a lot longer and it's a lot more popular over there. But what we're seeing now in Australia, with more and more people going on it, and they start to, hype it up and really talk it up to the people that are thinking about going on a gap year now. With every year that we've done it, more and more people have come on. So there's about 40 people now. From Australia itself, we could get 40, 50, not sure. We're going to have to cap it at some point. But yeah, looking around at that range.
Last question. Is there any commitment back to Ohrsom when you return to Melbourne?
No, there's no commitment to come to the learnings and all that. That's a little different when we do our 2-week program. There's a commitment because it's all subsidized for everyone. It's a very, very cheap program and way for people to get to Israel on a 2-week program. So they're expected to come back and have to do 20 weeks of learning with us. That's not something that's set in stone in a contract for the people going on the gap year. It's up to you if you want to come back and join the Ohrsom family in Melbourne, but I'm going to assume that's going to happen anyway, because it's the same thing that you're doing on gap year that's back in Melbourne. So it's good fun.
Thank you so much, Dion.